I always hated the desert heat. Dry, itchy, clinging to your skin like something alive. Even in the high forests of Gila, there was that humming silence beneath everything, like the whole land was holding its breath. Shanna was driving. She always insisted when we went on trips. She said she liked the control, but I think she didn't want to end up in a fiery wreck if I got too lightheaded. I didn't argue. I just smoked and watched the dust ribbon out behind us on Highway 180, the smell of juniper thick in the air. Peter was in the back seat, head leaned against the window, earbuds in, muttering something about sacred geometry and flow states. Probably high already. None of us knew what we were driving into. Shanna had found the place on some travel forum. It's off trail, but totally beautiful, she said, grinning, eyes too wide, like she was already seeing it. The trees thickened quickly, tall ponderosa pines like watchtowers over a forgotten kingdom. It was early afternoon when we finally turned off Highway 180, the dusty old GPS rerouting us through a forgotten service road, barely wide enough for our cars. The trees thickened around us like the walls of a narrowing throat. Alyssa and Justin brought up the rear in her red Subaru, the only vehicle that looked like it belonged to someone responsible. We were finally getting away. Justin was hyped about the fishing. Peter brought mushrooms in a mason jar, and Alyssa just needed a break from slinging drinks to college kids. Me? I didn't care where we went, as long as it wasn't home. We pulled into a gravel clearing surrounded by pines. It smelled like sap and hot dust. The sun was just beginning to tilt toward golden. Perfect, Shanna said, stepping out and stretching. Her long blonde hair caught the light like dry wheat. I looked out towards the creek and lit another smoke. Hope we don't get eaten by bears. Justin laughed as he climbed out. Bears I can handle. We were here. The sun dipped lower as we unloaded gear, voices light and joking. We picked a spot by a small ridge, with a narrow creek about 50 yards down the slope. Shanna and Alyssa set up the tents. Peter wandered off and came back with a bunch of oddly symmetrical rocks that had good energy. Justin cracked a beer and tuned his old acoustic guitar. I still can't believe you brought that thing, I said. Hey, he shrugged. I've had this guitar since like grade 9. It's coming with me till I die, or it falls apart. He wasn't joking. He'd carried it through breakups, road trips, and at least one near mugging. Phones came out for a while, but it was quickly obvious we were out of luck. No bars. Alyssa tried her satellite app, but even that sputtered. Could be the elevation, she muttered, or geomagnetic interference, solar flare. We're in a radio shadow out here. Peter raised his arms like a preacher. Free from the matrix. I rolled my eyes with a chuckle, but a sliver of unease wormed in. Something about not being able to reach the outside world. It made you feel like prey. But for the first time in months, I wasn't thinking about bills, missed calls, or the weight in my chest. It felt good, like maybe we were going to be okay. Peter hopped out of the back seat, hoodie hanging off one shoulder. He lit a joint and offered it to Alyssa, who waved it away. I'll wait till the fire's going, she said, shrugging her leather jacket off. Need to keep my head on straight when we're setting up camp. Last time I got high before pitching the tent, I ended up sleeping on a rock. We didn't spend much time with Shanna's friends, but I liked Alyssa. She had this dry way about her, wore spiked bracelets, fishnets, black eyeliner thick enough to count as armor. She didn't pretend to like anyone, and didn't pretend not to either. Just existed, like granite, solid and dark and cold in a weirdly comforting way. Justin flopped down on a log and immediately started rolling another beer can between his hands like it was a stress ball. My left hand ached like it always did in colder places, the locked pinky curling in on itself like it was embarrassed to be there. A reminder of the unfortunate pumpkin carving accident of 2013. Shanna was already spreading out the tent tarp, humming to herself. She always got weirdly focused when it came to outdoor stuff, like it connected to some deeper part of her. "We'll do a circle layout," she said, "tents around the fire. That way, we can all see each other." "Safety in numbers?" Peter asked with a half smile. She laughed. "Something like that." The wind picked up just a little then, rustling the grass in soft hisses. Something about it made the hair on my neck stand, like the sound of whispering in another room, just low enough you couldn't make out the words. I looked up at the sky. It was still clear, but pale, like washed out film. The sun seemed smaller here. We got to work. Justin and Peter wrestled a ring of stones for the fire. I gathered some smaller dry wood for tinder and psalm logs from the back of the truck. By sundown, the camp looked decent. 3 tents forming a loose circle. A crackling fire in the middle, smoke spiraling up into the dusk. Alyssa was poking at it with a stick, while Justin cracked open another beer and leaned back against his tent like a man who'd conquered nature. Peter had his headphones in again, but one earbud hung loose. He was scribbling something into his sketchbook. Geometry again, overlapping triangles and eyes and symbols I didn't recognize. "What's that about?" I asked him. He glanced up like he'd just remembered I existed. "Just some patterns I've seen lately, in dreams. Trippy." "Yeah," he said. "They don't feel like dreams though. More like messages." I didn't know how to respond to that, so I lit another cigarette and looked out into the trees. The forest was quieter now. The birds had stopped, and even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Only the fire crackled and popped, sending sparks spinning into the growing dark. Something moved then, just beyond the tree line. A shape, low and fast, there and gone before I could blink. I turned to Shanna, who was staring into the dark like she'd seen it too. "You all right?" I asked. She nodded slowly. "Yeah, just a deer." The sky turned the color of old bruises as night finally settled in. The wind died off completely, and with it, the last of the birdsong. The fire crackled in the center of camp, the only source of light, pushing back the dark like a feeble shield. Justin was telling some story about a guy who fell off a ladder while cleaning a second-story window, laughing so hard he kept messing it up. So this dude, he's just dangling there screaming, right? And his pants, swear to God, caught on a loose nail, so he's hanging by the waistband like some goddamn cartoon. Alyssa raised an eyebrow, half smiling, as she stirred her can of chili with a metal spoon. "You ever consider a different job? One where you don't nearly die every other week?" "Nah," Justin said, cracking another beer. "I'm an adrenaline artist." Peter giggled from where he sat cross-legged beside his tent, sketchbook resting on his knees. The firelight flickered across his geometry tattoos, hexagons and spirals snaking up his arms. He had eaten some of the mushrooms, but wasn't too out of it, occasionally staring into the flames like he was waiting for them to say something. Shanna sat close to me, her long legs stretched out toward the fire, face warm with firelight. She had a metal mug of tea clasped in both hands, eyes locked on the dancing flames. She looked calm, like she belonged here in a way the rest of us didn't. "It's quiet," Peter said after a while, glancing toward the trees. "Like weird quiet." "It's the forest, man," I said, "not a freeway." He shook his head. "No, like forest quiet. No crickets, no owls, not even wind. That's not right." I hadn't noticed until he said it, but now the silence pressed against my ears, thick and expectant. The fire popped, and it sounded like a gunshot. Shanna leaned over and nudged my leg. "You brought the lanterns, right?" "Yeah, 2 in the red duffel." She nodded. "Let's hang one by the food bag. Animals will keep their distance if it's lit." "Thought you loved animals," I joked. She smiled. "Doesn't mean I want to sleep next to a raccoon." I stood up, brushing dirt from my jeans. As I walked to the edge of camp to grab the duffel, I caught a glimpse of something, just for a second, through the trees. 2 pinpricks of light, like eyes catching the fire's reflection. I froze. It wasn't a deer, too low, too still. Then they were gone. "Josh?" Shanna's voice cut through the dark, soft but sharp. "You good?" "Yeah," I said too fast. "Just thought I saw something." A pause. "What kind of something?" I looked back toward the trees, but the shadows had swallowed whatever was there. "Probably nothing," I said. But the hairs on my arms were standing up. Back at the fire, Alyssa was rolling a joint with methodical precision. "Anyone else feel like we're being watched?" she asked without looking up. "Thanks," Justin said. "Real comforting." Peter closed his sketchbook. "You saw it too?" She nodded slowly. "Something's out there." I looked at Shanna. Her face didn't change. "There's stories about this place," Peter said suddenly. "Skinwalkers, shadow things, shapeshifters." Justin groaned. "Here we go." "I'm serious," Peter said. "Old Navajo legends. People who do rituals, bad ones. They give up their humanity to take on animal form. Some say they can wear your skin and mimic your voice." "Cool campfire story, Pete," Justin muttered. "Next you'll tell us Bigfoot runs an Airbnb out here." "No joke, man," Peter said. "I read one guy who swore his brother went missing around here. Said he saw him again a week later, only he wasn't right. Eyes were all wrong. Didn't talk the same. Then he disappeared again." The fire crackled. No one said anything for a moment. Alyssa finally lit her joint, took a long drag, then handed it to Peter. "Anyway," she said, exhaling, "you all are giving me the creeps." Peter stood up suddenly, turning toward the trees. "What?" I asked. He didn't answer. "Peter." He took a step forward, eyes wide. "Did you hear that?" "No," I said. "I did," Alyssa whispered. "Shh," Shanna said, standing now too. A long moment passed. Then from the woods, faint, distant, we heard it. It sounded almost like a voice. It came from 50 yards out, too far to see. I felt cold all over. Peter took a half step toward it. "Don't," Shanna said sharply, like a command. Peter froze. He backed away slowly, sat down, visibly shaken. "That's enough for tonight," I said, throwing another log on the fire. The flames hissed up, too fast. Sparks flew high into the air, dancing into the blackness above like tiny souls escaping. We all sat in silence, and then the wood swallowed it. That night, no one slept easy. Justin kept the fire going well past midnight, tossing on pine branches until the air smelled thick and sour. Alyssa stayed close to him, legs crossed, the hatchet resting next to her, not for show. Peter sat against his tent with a blanket around his shoulders, headphones in, but not playing anything. Just a dead cord dangling, staring off toward the trees like he was waiting for the voice to return. Shanna curled up in our tent, but didn't sleep. I could feel it in the way her breathing stayed shallow, eyes never fully closing. Her back pressed against mine like she needed to remind herself I was there. The forest was still wrong. You could feel it, the way it pressed in on the edges of your awareness. The quiet wasn't silence, it was waiting, listening. And somewhere in the middle of the night, something let out a sound that didn't belong to any animal I knew. A slow, groaning wail, like a person imitating a coyote badly, but drawn out, wet, warped. It came from the same direction we'd heard the voice. No one spoke. We just listened until it faded back into the nothing, like it had been sucked up by the trees themselves. Sometime before dawn, I finally passed out. I woke up sweating inside the tent, disoriented. Pale light leaked in through the fabric. It was cold, but I felt feverish, mouth dry, shirt clinging to me like glue. Shanna wasn't beside me. I crawled out into the grey morning. Peter stood by the tree line again, hunched over. Alyssa was crouched near the fire pit, poking through the ash with a stick. Justin stood with his arms crossed, frowning toward the woods. "What's going on?" I asked, voice rough. Peter answered without turning. "Tracks." I walked up beside him. In the soft dirt leading out into the woods, something had passed through during the night. I expected paw prints, maybe deer, or even coyote, but these weren't normal. They were elongated, two-legged, barefoot, too long. Some looked human, almost, but the toes were wrong, spread far apart, like claws, and the heels dug deep, as if whatever left them moved low to the ground or with unnatural weight. And then there were the drag marks. "Something crawled out here," Justin muttered, arms folded tight across his chest, then circled the camp. "Multiple times," Alyssa said. "It made loops." There were at least 4 full rings of tracks, wide, erratic spirals that came dangerously close to where we slept. I found one print not 5 feet from our tent. "What kind of animal does this?" Justin asked. Peter pointed. "That's where the voice came from." We followed the tracks a little deeper into the woods, just 20 or 30 feet, and the light dimmed noticeably. Trees leaning together tighter, shadows pooling thick even under the sun. The prints grew more erratic. There were claw marks on tree trunks now, 3, sometimes 4 deep gouges in the bark, like something testing its grip. Then we found it. A deer. At least, it had been a deer. Now it was gutted, strung up between 2 trees by its tendons like a puppet. Its ribcage had been split open from the inside. Blood soaked the pine needles below, already turning black. But what froze me wasn't the gore. It was the carving on its flank. A circle. Perfect, clean, surrounded by symmetrical triangle patterns. The same ones I'd seen in Peter's sketchbook. Peter stumbled backward, hand over his mouth. I didn't draw that. I swear. I just dreamed it." "Bullshit," Justin snapped. "You knew about this stuff. You talked about this stuff. You brought it here." "I didn't." "Enough," Shanna said, stepping between them. Her voice was sharp, calm in a way that made everyone shut up. She was holding a long branch like a staff, tapping it lightly on the ground. "We go back to camp," she said. "We pack, we leave. This place isn't safe anymore." Alyssa looked at her sideways. "You're just figuring that out now?" I studied Shanna's face. She was composed, too composed. Her eyes darted to the deer, then back to me, like she was waiting for a reaction. Justin cursed under his breath and turned back toward camp. Peter lingered a moment, then knelt in front of the deer like he was trying to understand something. Then he stood. "Those dreams I had," he said, "they weren't mine." And we walked back through the trees, the tracks still fresh in the dirt, leading toward camp in a pattern that didn't feel random. It felt deliberate. We broke camp fast. No one said much while we packed. Everyone was on edge. Alyssa kept looking over her shoulder. Peter was jittery, mumbling under his breath, eyes darting toward the tree line every few seconds like something was calling him. We moved in a tight group, gear slung haphazardly over our shoulders. The air felt thinner now, like it didn't want us here anymore. I remember thinking that everything would feel better once we saw the trucks. The familiar sight of my beat-up Tacoma and Alyssa's Subaru parked by the tree line would anchor reality again. But when we crested the slope and the forest opened into the makeshift trailhead, something was off. Justin stopped first. "What the hell?" he said, voice low. Both vehicles sat where we left them, but changed. My truck's hood was popped open, tilted at a crooked angle like someone had forced it. The windshield was cracked clean through. Alyssa's Subaru was worse. All 4 tires slashed, one of the side mirrors dangling by wires. I ran to my truck, heart hammering. The inside looked ransacked. Glove box open, contents scattered across the floor. Wires ripped from beneath the steering column. Deep gouges ran across the dashboard, like something with claws had been looking for something, or just wanted to destroy. Alyssa shouted as she threw open the hood of her Subaru. "Battery's gone. What the fuck, man?" Peter stood still, eyes scanning the tree line. "There's no footprints here." "He's right," Justin muttered, staring at the ground. "No prints, no tire marks, no nothing. Like they didn't walk here. Or they weren't human," I said before I could stop myself. Everyone turned toward me. Peter didn't even flinch. "I told you," he said, "they don't walk like we do." Shanna stood back from the rest of us, arms crossed. She looked at the vehicles, then at us. "This was planned," she said. "Yeah, no shit," Justin growled. Then Alyssa said, "Okay, so we're stuck. What's the play?" I turned to Shanna. "There's a ranger station, right? Off the 180. She nodded slowly. "We passed a sign for it about 8 miles back. Should be southeast of here. Might have a radio or some kind of help." "We can hike it," I said. "Stick to the road until we find someone." Justin wiped sweat from his brow. 8 miles through that? He gestured to the trees like they were alive. "You want to stay here?" Alyssa snapped. "With deer puppets and missing voices." Peter looked up, eyes glassy. "They won't let us leave." "Shut up, Peter," Justin barked. "I'm serious," Peter said, voice trembling. "We're already inside it, whatever this is." I looked to Shanna again. "What do you think?" She hesitated, just for a moment, but it was enough. "We hike," she said finally. "Pack light, just food, water, and anything sharp." "Leave the tents," Alyssa added. "No point." We quickly divvied up what we could carry. Jerky, trail mix, a couple of knives, one of the broken lanterns just in case. Alyssa took the hatchet. I kept my pocket knife and cigarettes. Shanna packed light and quiet, her face tight with focus. Justin surprised us by slinging his acoustic guitar over his back. "You're really bringing that thing?" Alyssa asked, raising an eyebrow. He shrugged. Had it since me, Josh, and Peter first met. It's coming with me or I'm not going. I didn't argue. The old guitar had been with us through years of late-night bonfires, hangovers, and breakdowns. In some weird way, it felt like it belonged out here with us, part of the group. And if everything else was falling apart, maybe that bit of consistency was worth something. We moved fast, wanting distance between us and the wreckage. The woods felt heavier now, like the trees were closer together, bending just a little more over the trail than they had the day before. Every so often, I thought I saw movement, just in the edge of my vision. A branch twitching, a shadow ducking behind a trunk. Once, I swore I saw a figure crouched low in the brush, face like a stretched out deer skull. But when I turned fully, it was gone. Peter lagged behind more and more. They're watching us, he kept saying. They've always been watching us. This was part of it. Keep moving, Shanna told him. We walked until the sun started to sink behind the hills. The trail seemed to keep looping back in on itself, despite Justin's compass telling us we were going straight. Peter finally collapsed near a dry creek bed. We're going in circles, he whispered. They're folding the forest around us. And for the first time all day, none of us argued with him. Justin paced in tight circles. No way, I've been watching the compass. Shannon knelt beside Peter, gave him water, and said gently, "We just need to rest. Then we'll figure out where we are." I sat nearby, staring at the trees. No wind, no sound. The forest felt like it was holding its breath. Alyssa stood apart from the group, hatchet resting on her shoulder, scanning the woods. "You all feel that?" she asked. "Feel what?" Justin said. She didn't answer for a while. Then, like we're being herded. Not hunted, herded. A chill ran through me. We stayed there longer than we should have. None of us wanted to admit we were scared to keep going, but no one wanted to admit we were scared to stay either. So we waited, and the woods waited with us. The sun started to dip behind the trees, and shadows spilled across the forest floor like ink from a knocked-over jar. We hadn't moved for over an hour. It wasn't that we couldn't. It was that none of us had the guts to suggest it. Alyssa eventually lit the broken lantern. The bulb flickered with a sickly orange light, just enough to keep the darkness from swallowing our little clearing whole. Shanna sat next to me, arms wrapped around her knees, her eyes distant. Justin tuned his guitar in near silence, the soft notes falling flat against the forest hush. Peter lay curled under a blanket of pine needles, his lips moving in a quiet circular prayer. "I don't like how still it is," Alyssa said. "Where's the wind?" There was no wind. Not a single leaf moved. No insects, no birds, not even the usual creaking of trees settling after dark. "I think the forest is listening," Peter said, eyes wide. "If we speak too loud, it hears us." Justin kept plucking his guitar, slower now. Could be the altitude messing with us. "No," Alyssa said, cutting him off. "This isn't altitude sickness. It's wrong." I didn't want to believe them, but I couldn't argue. Everything had taken on a slightly wrong angle, like a painting hung just off kilter. When I blinked, the shadows seemed to jump a little further than they should have. At one point, I could have sworn I saw my own reflection staring at me from the bark of a tree. Just a flicker, then gone. Shanna leaned against my shoulder. I could feel her heart beating too fast. "I think we need to take shifts sleeping," she whispered. "I'll go first," I said. Sleeping was never my expertise anyway. "Me too," Alyssa added. "I'm not shutting my eyes." Justin gave her a look. "You'll wear yourself out." She pulled her jacket tighter. "I think I'd rather be tired than, I don't know, dead." We didn't build a fire. None of us wanted to risk it, so we huddled in the dim glow of the busted lantern and tried to pretend it was enough. Around midnight, I heard something moving just past the clearing. Slow steps, methodical. Something big, not crashing through the woods like a bear, more like it knew where to step to avoid making noise, but couldn't help the size of its weight. Justin froze mid-note, hands still on the strings. We all listened. Crunch, pause, crunch. Alyssa raised the hatchet. Peter sat bolt upright. "Don't look at it. Don't look. Don't..." Then the sound stopped. Dead silence. I held my breath so long my lungs burned. And then it laughed. Not a cackle, not a human voice. Just a low, grating chuckle that rose up like a breeze through dead leaves, circling the clearing, dragging against the trees. It didn't belong. Not to any person or animal. It sounded worn, like something ancient, learning how to pretend it had vocal cords. "Cover the light," Shanna whispered. Alyssa clicked off the lantern, and we were plunged into black. For a long time, no one moved. We sat in total silence, the dark pressing down on us, listening to our own breathing. Eventually, the sound faded, but none of us were the same afterward. So much for sleeping in shifts. No one slept. When the sun finally crept back into the sky, its light felt cold and distant, like it wasn't really ours. We packed up without speaking. Alyssa's hands were shaking. Peter wouldn't even look at the trees. As we resumed walking, Shanna tugged on my sleeve. "That thing, last night." "Yeah." She hesitated. It sounded like it was enjoying watching us. I didn't have an answer. I just nodded, lips tight. Then Peter, who'd gone ahead, maybe 20 feet, called out in a strangled voice, "Guys!" We rushed to where he stood. Ahead of him, carved into the bark of a wide dead pine tree, were words, about 8 feet up, almost too high to reach. "Welcome back. Fresh." The bark peeled clean. No dust in the cuts. Below it, still glistening, something dark and red had been smeared in a handprint. 4 fingers. 1 missing. Shanna grabbed my hand without thinking, and I felt her fingers tremble in mine. My throat dried out. That's my hand," I said. "The pinky." Nobody argued. Nobody could. We didn't talk after we saw the handprint. It hung over us like a curse. A message we weren't supposed to read. Each step we took after that felt heavier. The sun was up, but the light didn't warm us. Shadows clung to our backs like cobwebs. Shanna walked with her head low, holding tightly to my hand like a child afraid of being left behind. Alyssa had the hatchet out again, knuckles white. Peter was muttering again, quieter this time, like he was trying not to let the forest hear. Only Justin kept his swagger, guitar still slung across his shoulder, though the bravado in his stride had shrunk. He didn't say much, but every so often he'd strum some chords or a couple notes, almost out of habit, like a ward against the silence. We were maybe a half-mile from a spot where the trail widened when we heard it. Snap. Peter led the way, unusually quiet. No jokes, no weird philosophical rambles. We didn't speak much, just walked, trying to find the old access road or the highway or something that led back to sanity. That was when we saw it. A narrow trail of bones, not arranged randomly. Number. These were stacked and spiraled in tight, unnatural formations. Vertebrae balanced on antlers, bird skulls jammed into jawbones, totems built by something that understood bones the way we understand words. The deeper into the forest we went, the more frequent they became. We passed a tree with strips of human clothing hanging from the branches, sun-bleached and stiff. A child's sneaker impaled on a branch. No one said a word. Peter moved ahead, ducking under a low-hanging limb. The second his foot touched the mossy ground beyond it, there was a loud snap. He screamed. We all rushed forward to see him vanish into the ground. No, a hole, dug deep and narrow, lined with sharpened wood stakes like fangs. Primitive, brutal, and now slick with Peter's blood. "Help!" he screamed, clutching his leg. "Oh God, something's moving down here." His leg was bent wrong, bone poking out above the ankle, his jeans soaked through. Then he went still, eyes wide, not at us, toward the trees ahead of him. I looked over my shoulder. There was something on the ridge. Not a man, not a deer, something in between. Its limbs bent at unnatural angles, and its skin was mottled and too tight, pulled thin across a long jaw. No eyes, just a snout that sniffed the air like it could taste us. Then it moved, like a spider, like liquid. It launched itself into the pit without hesitation. Peter's scream was so sharp it tore through the trees like glass shattering. And then, silence, followed by a crunch so final it made me retch. Blood splattered from the hole like red paint. We stumbled back, horrified. I grabbed Justin's arm. "We have to go. We have to go." "No," Justin whispered, looking like a man watching a car crash in slow motion. "We can't leave him." "He's gone," Shanna said. I couldn't meet her eyes. We turned and ran. The bone trail followed us, winding ahead through the woods, like it knew exactly where we'd go next. Peter was gone, just like that. And I think in that moment, some part of me broke, because whatever was hunting us, it wasn't just killing, it was playing with us. Deeper into the woods, toward the slope that should have led down to the fire road. But the trail was different now. The trees were denser, like they'd shifted in the night. We were lost, and worse, we were being hunted. It wasn't long before we heard them again. Not bird sounds this time. Voices. Peter's voice. "Guys, hey, I'm here, over here, come on." We stopped cold. It was Peter's voice. Yes, but hollow, almost playful. And it wasn't coming from one direction. It echoed all around us. Alyssa drew the hatchet. "This is some skinwalker bullshit," Justin muttered. Then one of them stepped out of the trees. It looked like Peter. Same hair, same clothes, same vacant stoner smile. But the eyes were black, not like pupils, like they'd been scooped out and replaced with ash. It tilted its head. Alyssa didn't hesitate. With a roar, she ran forward and slammed the hatchet across its face. Its bones cracked and splintered. The creature staggered backward, but didn't fall. Instead, it let out a sound like cracking bones and laughter combined, a noise that vibrated in our skulls. Alyssa hit it again, harder. The blade edge drove straight through its collarbone, into the thing's chest. It screamed, not in pain, in rage. The creature thrashed backward, retreating into the trees, leaving behind a smear of something black and thick on the moss-covered ground. Alyssa stumbled back, shaking, hands covered in dirt and blood. "Holy shit," she gasped. "Did I kill it?" "No," Justin said, eyes wide. "You fucked it up though, goddamn." Shanna grabbed my arm. "We have to go, now." We didn't argue. The forest around us erupted in howls. Not wolves, not coyotes, something worse. The air had changed again, thicker, hotter. The smell of rot drifted through the trees. We sprinted down the slope, dodging branches and roots. The sunlight flickered like 40 lights overhead. Something chased us from the treetops, leaping through limbs with impossible speed. We didn't stop until we reached the riverbed. Dry, cracked. We collapsed behind a fallen log, gasping. Peter was gone, and the thing that wore his face wasn't the only one out there. There were more, and they knew we were tired. They knew we were afraid. We didn't know where we were going anymore. The landmarks were wrong. Trees we swore we'd passed hours ago showed up again. Only their bark was gouged with symbols that hadn't been there before. The sun never seemed to move. It hovered behind a layer of dead clouds like a dying light bulb. Our pace was erratic, too fast to plan, too slow to escape. Every so often we'd freeze, sure we heard footsteps not our own, breathing not from our lungs. At some point, Alyssa grabbed the back of my shirt. "We have to stop," she said, panting. "Just 5 minutes." "No," Shanna snapped. "We keep going. We're running in circles. I don't care. I'm not sitting still in this place." But we had to stop. Justin had a gash on his forearm from a low-hanging branch. Except it hadn't been a branch. It moved when it scratched him, like a claw or fingers. We collapsed at the base of a blackened tree. The trunk looked like it had been struck by lightning years ago, split down the middle, hollow. I leaned against it and lit a cigarette, hands shaking too hard to cup the flame right on the first try. "Something's wrong with this forest," Alyssa said. "It's like it wants us to stay lost." Peter's voice echoed again in the distance. "Guys, I'm hurt. Please, come back." It sounded so real, so close. Justin just shook his head. "That's not him." Shanna crouched beside me. "We need to move soon, before dark." "Yeah," Alyssa said, "but we need to watch our step." And she was right. We hadn't gone another 100 feet before Shanna stepped down and screamed. Her foot sank through the ground. A trap. Something had dug a pit beneath a mat of leaves and branches. The forest swallowed her leg to the knee. Justin and I grabbed her shoulders and yanked. She came free with a squelch and a boot left behind. Her leg was bleeding. The edge of the hole was lined with teeth, carved animal bones sharpened into points. They hadn't been buried there randomly. This was designed. Shanna's face twisted in pain and confusion. "What the hell is this?" That's when we heard the scream. Not a trick of the forest. A real scream. Justin's face dropped. That was Alyssa. We turned, but Alyssa wasn't there. Only her hatchet lay on the ground, blade red, handle snapped in two. "Shit," I shouted. She was right here." Then, from deeper in the woods, her voice. "Josh, Shanna, it got me. Please help. Please." I turned toward it, heart pounding. Shanna yanked me back. "Don't. That's not her." "But what if it's not her?" Justin picked up the broken hatchet, eyes glassy. I looked around us. The forest felt alive, like it was watching, listening, even breathing. "We keep moving," I said. "But where?" Justin asked. I looked to the sky, blank, overcast, No way to tell north. Then I saw something, high in the branches above, a shape lashed to a crooked trunk, bones, skulls, ribbons of shredded clothing. Alyssa's leather jacket hung from the bones like a flag. Shanna didn't scream. She just shut her eyes and squeezed my hand. Justin kept his gaze on it, jaw tight. They left it for us. A message, a warning, or maybe just a joke. That night, we built no fire. We sat in the dirt, back to back, the broken hatchet and Justin's guitar between us. Every branch above looked like a limb ready to reach down and pluck us away. Shanna was quiet. Justin didn't play music anymore. We were only 3 now, and the forest wasn't finished. By the next morning, we had stopped talking. We didn't even say Alyssa's name. The sun rose pale and expressionless, leaking light through a forest that had rearranged itself in the night. Trees stood in unfamiliar shapes. A boulder that had been beside our camp was gone. Even the air felt staler, like we'd spent the night inside something's lungs. We hiked in silence, tracing the dry bed of a creek that Justin swore led toward Highway 180. I didn't argue. I just followed. Every sound we made, boots on rock, broken twigs, shallow breath, seemed to echo like gunshots in a mausoleum. Shanna walked with her arm over my shoulder, quiet and limping slightly from the trap wound. Every so often, I'd glance up at her, and she'd be staring off into the woods instead of watching the trail. When I asked if she was okay, she'd always answer too quickly. Yeah, fine, just thinking. Thinking of what? I didn't press, I just kept moving. Around midday, we found a clearing. At first, we thought it was a stroke of luck. Open sky, fewer trees, a moment to breathe. But the grass was wrong, dead in patches. A faint metallic smell clung to the soil. There were no birds here, no insects. Even the wind seemed to halt at the edge of the clearing like it knew better than to enter. I don't like this, Shanna muttered. Justin pointed to the far end. There, that rock face. We climb it, we might get a better view. Maybe spot the road. And I was the idiot who walked ahead first. I'd made it just a few steps into the clearing when the world exploded. Something slammed into my side, hard enough to knock the air out of me. I hit the ground in a tangle of limbs and pain, the wind gone from my lungs before I could scream. I didn't even see it at first, just teeth, fur, and pressure crushing my ribs. Then I saw its face, a wolf skull with matted fur, jaw hanging wrong, open too wide, eyes black but burning with something underneath, antlers half grown from the sides of its head, and worse, beneath its throat, a human mouth. Lips twitching, whispering things. It bit down on my arm. I screamed. The pain was cold, then burning, then nothing. The world tunneled in. I heard Justin yell. Then the weight was gone. I rolled onto my back just in time to see Justin swing his guitar like a war club. It smashed against the creature's side with a crack, wood and strings flying. The skinwalker stumbled, shrieked in a sound like a coyote imitating a human child, and lunged at him. Justin didn't run. He roared, drove the broken neck of the guitar into the thing's throat. It thrashed, knocking him over. They tumbled together, blood flying in arcs across the dry grass. "Go!" Justin screamed. I tried to stand. My arm hung limp, torn open to the muscle. I said go. I staggered backward, grabbed Shanna's arm as she reached me at the tree line. We ran, me hobbling, arms slick with blood. Behind us, the forest swallowed Justin's cries. He didn't scream long. We didn't stop until we were halfway up a dry slope, hidden in a ditch under snarled undergrowth. My vision blurred with pain. Shanna tore a strip from her flannel and tied off my arm as best she could. Her hands didn't shake. "You're lucky," she said softly. "It didn't hit an artery." "Justin," I croaked. Her expression didn't change. He knew what he was doing. She looked out into the trees. "That thing, it won't stop, not until it's done." I lay back against the dirt and tried not to pass out. That night, we didn't speak. I couldn't. Shanna stayed awake, humming something soft and wordless. I woke once, near midnight, and saw her staring into the woods. It looked reverent. The woods had gone quiet. The kind of quiet that feels like a held breath before a scream. Shanna and I sat beneath a twisted pinyon tree, the sky bleeding rust and ash above us. My arm throbbed with every heartbeat, the makeshift bandage soaked through hours ago. I could barely hold my head up. Everything spun. She looked at me, not like she had before, not the soft, patient stare she gave when we were tangled up in blankets or sitting drinking gas station coffee. This was something else, something older. There was no warmth left in her eyes, just certainty. "You've always been kind," she said gently, brushing hair from my forehead. I tried to speak, but it came out as a croak. She was crying, and while there was sadness in it, it seemed almost ceremonial. She stood. I barely noticed at first, until I saw the glint of silver in her hand. My pocket knife, the one I kept clipped to my belt, the one I used to cut twine, to scale fish, to open stubborn bottles of beer. She held it like it belonged to her now. "Shanna." The word caught in my throat as she drove the blade into my stomach. Hot pain surged through me like fire through paper. I gasped, buckling forward, arms curling around the wound, blood rushing between my fingers. She stepped back calmly, watching me collapse onto the pine needles, still clutching the knife's handle. The forest exhaled. Figures began to emerge from the tree line, robed in tattered cloth and animal hides, faces obscured by bone masks, antlers, bark. They moved like wind, like memory. The coven. One of them crouched beside me, tilting my head upward so I could see. Shanna had removed her flannel and shirt, standing bare in the cool air, blood spattered across her chest. She stepped into a shallow depression in the earth, a ritual basin lined with ash, bones, and twigs, shaped like symbols I couldn't recognize. And then she began to change. Her skin bubbled, split, peeled away like wet bark. Fur pushed through her flesh in slick, tangled knots, dark grey and matted. Her legs bent backward at the knees with an audible pop, and her arms stretched until the elbows snapped and reformed like growing branches. Her jaw elongated, teeth blackening, sharpening into things meant for tearing. A second mouth, wet and twitching, opened below her collarbone and began to whisper the same chant she'd hummed nights before. Her eyes were the last to change. They stayed human for a moment longer than they should have, blue and searching, even as her face twisted into the snout of something not dog, not wolf. Then they flared gold, pupil thinning to slits. The witches bowed, and Shanna, what used to be Shanna, raised her new head to the sky and let out a scream that was equal parts howl, chant, and wail. It tore through the trees like a blade. The world started to dim around me. My fingers went numb. The last thing I saw was her crawling toward me, limbs jerking like a broken marionette, her human mouth still whispering apologies while her animal one smiled. and then nothing.